the Genesis Collective podcast. For those of you guys that don't know me, my name is Matt Larson, and I am lead pastor of Anthem Church in Thousand Oaks, California, and one of the co-founders of the Genesis Collective. I've had the opportunity of working with Chris for a number of years and have looked to him and Merrill as mentors to Kristen and I, and it's been a great experience. Chris asked me to come on and share a little bit of my experience with fundraising for church planters. I'll give you a brief version of our story and then a little bit of what I've learned along the way. First of all, we planted Anthem Thousand Oaks about 10 years ago. It'll be 10 years in October. And in that, we had to do quite a bit of fundraising, actually 2 different rounds of fundraising. We fundraised for the residency that we did with Community Christian Church in Naperville, Illinois. We fundraised our salary that translated to roughly $55,000 for that year. And then the following year, we stepped out to do another round of fundraising for the initial launch of our church, Anthem Church in Thousand Oaks. In addition to my salary, part of Kevin Bailey's salary, we brought on Ryan Hinkle part-time, we brought on Jenny Hasseth part-time. We had a number of different salaries that were a part of that. We also did fundraising to actually create some space for us to buy equipment and do some minimal, but still some advertising and things of that nature. This was 2009, so the just Facebook, social media, online stuff was there, but it wasn't quite as prominent as maybe it is now. Although, actually, I think it was a little more effective back then. But I sound like a really old man when I talk that way. Well, it was more effective back in my day when I was planting a church. Sorry about that. Anyhow, the fundraising experience, I can't remember the total dollar amount that we were trying to raise, but I will say this. We were very aware of the financial situation that the culture was in. It was 2008, 2009. Massive recession hits in 2008. Nobody had much money to give. And we were very aware of that. Like, that was part of the narrative of us starting the church. And so rather than, say, have a few large gifts, and I don't even know what that would have looked like, we knew that it was going to be a shared load. That starting a church was going to be a story of many people probably giving smaller amounts than it was going to be a few people giving larger amounts. So that was kind of the journey that we set out on, and started working on things from the perspective of, if God is in this, then He's gonna provide an avenue for us to carry things out. So a couple of things that we learned along the way. First of all, we had to define success. So this is the first thing I'll talk about, was defining success in fundraising. We had to reconcile in our minds and in our hearts, is the call of God on us to plant a church, yes or no? Because the reality is, churches don't need to cost money. Like, you could start a church today and it would not need to cost money to do that. And we had to reconcile that. Even myself, Kevin Bailey, Ryan Hinkle, Jenny Hasseth, we were all on either full or part-time, and we had to reconcile, are we in this because we believe that the call of God is on us to plant a church? If so, then if no money comes in, if our fundraising efforts result in absolutely nothing, we're still in this. Like, we trust God, we can go get jobs, we'll figure out the bivocational thing, we'll start the church in our home, we don't need a microphone, I already have a guitar. Yeah, I mean, those kinds of things. Like, we kind of came to the conclusion that that in our hearts, we don't need to do this with money, we could do this without. So we had that. I mean, what if nothing comes in? What's our budget? What are we doing? We set that. We actually had conversations around that. Then we had our target. What do we do if whatever the dollar amount is? I think it was like $150,000 or $200,000 or something. So what if we're able to raise that amount of money? How are we going to use that? So we actually set a budget at that as well. And then we had another conversation about, what if we get way beyond what we are envisioning on a fundraising effort? Like, in a sense, I know how to be brought low, and I know how to live in plenty or abundance. Paul talks about to the Philippians. What would we do if we had excess? And in doing that, what we had to kind of reconcile is, what is the purpose of money in a church plant, and is it something that we need, or do we genuinely not need it? And so we were able to kind of settle our hearts and say, we don't need the money, but we'll put it to work if the Lord provides for us, and the diligent effort of actually casting vision and inviting people to join in. If that produces resources to work with, then we want to be faithful with those, and we will create a plan for that. So that was one of the big things that was really important to us, just settling that issue in our hearts. The second thing, and I've sort of alluded to it already, is that God doesn't have a money problem, and so fundraising is ultimately it's vision casting. And in vision casting, you're out there to see if the story of faith that God is writing on your life, the call to plant a church, is aligning with the story of generosity that God is writing on somebody else's life. So when I would show up to fundraising appointments, and this is something that I learned pretty early on, and I'd meet with people and have conversations with them, I wasn't just trying to schmooze their money out of them. Oh my goodness, so quickly I realized that's just not the journey that we're on. The journey that we're on is casting vision for what God is doing and seeing if there's a heart that aligns with that, and then it's a joy to give. I had to reconcile again. I didn't need any money from anybody that I was talking to, and so there was such freedom to go and just cast vision for the work that we believed God was calling us into, and that allowed it released my heart from worry and anxiety and fret about money, and allowed me to just be a vision caster, a dreamer, a leader, inviting people to experience the story of God by living in the generosity that God was inviting them into. I mean, those types of things ended up being more discipleship-oriented conversations than even conversations with the objective of getting as much money out of a person as possible. I think if I could recommend something, it would be finding ways to identify what is success in fundraising, what are you actually trying to accomplish, and then what is the nature of the conversation that you're having. Are you just trying to get money out of people, or is there a bigger story at work? And I believe if we understand the nature of the Church of God and the way that Paul even interacts with the Corinthians, with the Philippians as it relates to money, which those are two of the biggest, 2 Corinthians and Philippians, and there are others, but those are the two main ones. You just see such freedom in him. The way that Paul writes to the Philippians, it's look, whether there's money or no money, I'm doing the mission, but you guys provided for me and I'm grateful for it. And that ultimately needs to be our heart as church planters. So I hope this has been helpful. I know it's not a lot of practical tips on fundraising. Maybe we'll do another one at some point that talks through some of the practicalities of those conversations. But yeah, that's what I got for you. I hope this was helpful. Have a great day, and we'll see you soon.